June 17th, 2025. Yesterday, at the meeting of the leaders of the Group of Seven, or G7, a forum of democracies with advanced economies, President Donald Trump told reporters, "The UK is very well protected. You know why? Because I like them, that's why. That's the ultimate protection." Commenters often note that Trump talks like a mob boss, but rarely has his organized crime style of governance been clearer than in yesterday's statement. Also yesterday, Anna Swanson and Lauren Hirsch of the New York Times reported that Trump has taken unprecedented control over U.S. steel. Japan's Nippon Steel has been trying to take over U.S. steel since 2023, but the Biden administration blocked the deal for security reasons. In order to move it forward, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick demanded an agreement that gives to the president and his successors, or a person the president designates, a single share of preferred stock, known as Class G, or gold. The deal gives the president permanent veto power over nearly a dozen actions the company might want to take, as well as power over its board of directors. Swanson and Hirsch note that the U.S. government historically takes a stake in companies only when they are in financial trouble or when they play a significant role in the economy. "We have a golden share, which I control or the president controls," Trump told reporters on Thursday. "Now, I'm a little concerned whoever the president might be, but that gives you total control." This kind of deal echoes those of authoritarians Trump appears to admire. His ongoing support for Russian President Vladimir Putin was on display at the G7 when he echoed Russian talking points that blamed European countries and the United States for Putin's war against Ukraine, rather than acknowledging that it was Russia that attacked Ukraine after giving assurances that it would respect Ukrainian sovereignty in exchange for Ukraine's giving up the Soviet nuclear weapons stored there. Also yesterday, Renee Marsh and Ellen Nilsson of CNN reported that officials from the Environmental Protection Agency under Trump have been telling staff in the Midwest, which the authors note has a legacy of industrial pollution, to stop enforcing violations against fossil fuel companies. At the same time, the Department of Justice has cut its environmental division significantly, leaving no one to do the work. Trump vowed that if he were reelected, he would slash the oil and gas regulations he claims are burdensome. Now, one EPA enforcement staffer told Marsh and Nilsson, "The companies are scoffing at the cops. EPA enforcement doesn't have the leverage they once had." Also yesterday, outdoor journalist Wes Seiler reported in Wes Seiler's newsletter that while language inserted in the Republicans' budget reconciliation bill requires the sale of up to 3.3 million acres of publicly owned land, an amendment authorizes the sale of 258 million acres more. The amendment comes from the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee and was written by Senators Mike Lee, a Republican of Utah, and Steve Daines, a Republican of Montana. It includes Bureau of Land Management and U.S. Forest Service lands in 11 states: Alaska, Arizona, California, Colorado, Idaho, New Mexico, Nevada, Oregon, Utah, Washington, and Wyoming. As Seiler notes, while the measure does not currently include national monument lands, the Department of Justice under Trump is arguing that the president can revoke national monument protections. If it did so, that would make another 13.5 million acres available for purchase. Seiler notes the process for selling those lands calls for an enormous rush on sales, all without hearings, debate, or public input opportunities. Today, Elliot Brown of the Wall Street Journal reported that Mukesh Ambani, the richest man in India, is now one of the many wealthy foreign real estate developers pouring money into the Trump Organization. Brown noted that the Trump family is aggressively developing its businesses while Trump is in the White House, reaching past real estate into cryptocurrency and other sectors. The growing power of international oligarchs to use the resources of the government for their own benefit recalls a speech Robert Mueller, then director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, gave in New York City in 2011. In it, he explained that globalization and modern technology had changed the nature of organized crime. No longer regional networks with a clear structure, he said, organized crime had become international, fluid, and sophisticated, with multi-billion-dollar stakes. Its operators were cross-pollinating across countries, religions, and political affiliations, sharing only their greed. They didn't care about ideology, they cared about money. They would do anything for a price. These criminals may be former members of nation-state governments, security services, or the military, he said. They are capitalists and entrepreneurs, but they are also master criminals who move easily between the licit and illicit worlds. And in some cases, these organizations are as forward-leaning as Fortune 500 companies. These criminal enterprises, he noted, were working to corner the market on oil, gas, and precious metals. And to do so, Mueller explained, they may infiltrate our businesses. They may provide logistical support to hostile foreign powers. They may try to manipulate those at the highest levels of government. Indeed, these so-called iron triangles of organized criminals, corrupt government officials, and business leaders pose a significant national security threat. The FBI's increasing focus on organized crime and national security is what prompted its interest in the connections between the Trump campaign and Russia in 2016. The willingness of Republicans to enable Trump's behavior is especially striking today, since June 17th is the anniversary of the 1972 Watergate break-in. On that day, operatives associated with President Richard M. Nixon's team tried to tap the headquarters of the Democratic National Committee in Washington's Watergate complex. Early in the morning of June 17, 1972, Frank Wills, a 24-year-old security guard, noticed that a door lock had been taped open. He ripped off the tape and closed the door, but on his next round, he found the door taped open again. He called the police, who found 5 burglars in the Democratic National Committee headquarters located in the building. The story played out over the next 2 years, with Nixon insisting he was not involved in the affair. But in early August 1974, a tape, recorded just days after the break-in, revealed Nixon and an aide plotting to invoke national security to protect the president. Republican senators who had not wanted to convict their president of the charges of impeachment being considered in the House knew the game was over. A delegation of them went to the White House to tell Nixon they would vote to convict him. On August 9, 1974, Nixon became the first president in U.S. history to resign. Chris Geidner of Law Dork notes that despite the lawmakers in our own era who are unwilling to stop Trump, the pushback is very real. Geidner notes not just the No King's Day protests of the weekend, but also a lawsuit by the American Bar Association, or the ABA, suing Trump for his attacks on law firms and lawyers, calling Trump's actions unprecedented and uniquely dangerous to the rule of law. Geidner also notes that lower court judges are upholding the Constitution, and he points especially to U.S. District Judge William Young, an appointee of Republican President Ronald Reagan. In a hearing yesterday, Young insisted on holding the government accountable for both Trump's actions and the follow-up actions from those Trump has empowered to act. Young called cuts to funding for National Institutes of Health research grants illegal and void, and ordered the NIH to restore the funds immediately. I am hesitant to draw this conclusion, but I have an unflinching obligation to draw it, that this represents racial discrimination and discrimination against America's LGBTQ community. That's what this is. I would be blind not to call it out. My duty is to call it out. I've never seen a record where racial discrimination was so palpable, Young said during the hearing. I've sat on this bench now for 40 years. I've never seen government racial discrimination like this. He added, "You are bearing down on people of color because of their color. The Constitution will not permit that. Have we fallen so low? Have we no shame?"
Letters from an American was written and read by Heather Cox Richardson. It was produced at Soundscape Productions, Dedham, Massachusetts. Recorded with music composed by Michael Moss.